Welcome to the Shopify Happy Hour. On the show, you'll hear from Shopify founders, operators, and experts on growth marketing strategies, lessons learned from the trenches, and other nuggets of e-commerce wisdom shared over a different drink each episode. Today, I'd like to welcome Vasa Martinez, founder at Perfy, which creates mood-boosting soda with a mission to support metabolic and cognitive health. Vasa, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, glad to have you on. So I'm excited to try this. I've had some Perfy sitting in my fridge for a couple of weeks now and have been holding off on it. And I'm excited to crack into this. So why don't we talk about? So I'm about to crack open the Dr. Perfy, which I love the imagery. You've got looks like a pear and some berries on the cover or on the can art, which is super nice. And you've got sounds like something a little bit different. Why don't you tell us about what you have?
Yeah, I've got a limited edition pepperoni pizza flavor. It's very, very polarizing on the internet right now, but it's been a fun lunch. I mean, a lot of founders sometimes say they don't have that much fun. This was fun as hell to execute a new product and a launch and a LTO strategy pretty solo. So I had a good time with it.
Fantastic. Did you time that at all? So for anybody listening, we are in mid-February. Super Bowl was in the past. I'm getting my weeks confused. Last week and a half, right? So did you time the launch of that product to coincide with football season or Super Bowl?
Yeah, it had nothing to do with football. It did launch the pre-sale on February 9th, but February 9th is National Pizza Day. So that was the strategy there. But this is all it's a real thing. It's a real product, but it's all just kind of a big ruse for our real launch, which is next week. And I think by the time this goes live, it'll have already launched the pre-sale. So it was all to launch Cherry Cola. There's so many people talking about pepperoni pizza, and there's the VIP kids landing at media doors right now and influencer doors. So as they're talking about pepperoni pizza, good, bad, or indifferent, people are going to go to the site and they're going to see that the real launch is Cherry Cola.
I love it. I love it. That could be a perfect pairing. Good stuff. Okay, so why don't you, while I crack this open, why don't you talk to me about what we're drinking? Because this is not just better for you soda with low sugar, but why don't you talk about what else are in these beverages?
Yeah, so Perfy is a strategically positioned functional soda or modern soda, what they're calling it now. And it's more of a brain health soda than a gut health soda. It's not a gut health soda at all. There's no prebiotics or probiotics. It's not intended to compete with Olipop or Poppy, although buyers and investors tend to think so. The real goal here is for it to be more for the people who want to kick their feet up and relax after work, or for the kids that might be hyperactive when they steal their parents' sodas. It might be actually a good thing, and parents are actually like winking when they comment on certain posts. Definitely not intended to be a gut health soda. I think there's plenty out there. It actually reminds me of the days when I was at Quest Nutrition, when a new protein bar launched every week, and every bar that wanted to be like Quest fizzled out, and every bar that wanted to be like themselves won. Like One Bar, Quest One, RX Bar One, Cliff, and Kind. Those are the five that I think about. There's more now, like more modern bars out now, but at that time, the bars that were really being their own self and strategically positioned one. And that's what I'm trying to do with Perfy.
I love it. So I just had my first sip. It is super smooth, just a hint of sweetness, not too much. I typically don't drink, your traditional sodas. I'm pretty focused on health, fitness, nutrition. And often at nighttime, if I want something, I'll have sparkling water, maybe add some lemon or lime or something to that. But this is really nice because it's sparkling, it's smooth, it's got a hint of sweetness, and tastes solid. But that's not where you stopped, right? You've also, in addition to making this a very lightly sweetened beverage, you're also adding other stuff to it. So can you talk about what else you're doing with these sodas?
Yeah, the idea is pretty simple, but in practice it's kind of complex. It's water with juices. At first we launched with not from concentrate juices to have more of a freshness. Our next flavor, Cherry Cola, will have some concentrates. Which is good for a number of reasons on our part. But in terms of what else is in there, there's a natural sweetener system. Sometimes there's sea salt, sometimes there's not. And the functional ingredients, the constant is L-theanine throughout them all. And then based on the flavor, we'll add in turmeric or ashwagandha as well.
Awesome. So can you talk about what L-theanine, ashwagandha, and turmeric, while we're at it, what those will do for people?
I don't really make any claims. I send them, honestly, like we got sued so many times at Quest where I try not to do that. I can tell you that there's good research on all three of those items. When I was selecting them during R&D, I went with things that are most effective and efficacious over time, or effective and safe over time. And that's L-theanine, turmeric, and ashwagandha, meaning if you drink 5 cans of Perfy today, and you drink every day for 10 years, it'll have the same impact and safety as it was on day one. So that's how I selected them. In terms of what they do, me personally, I noticed L-theanine helped me with certain workouts. My heart rate one day without taking L-theanine was a little bit different than a day where I did R&D. But there's tons of research out there that tell you about it. For the most part, L-theanine is great for stress, mood. Ashwagandha is great for stress and anxiety. Turmeric's a great thing for inflammation. All of them combined in a way that's not intended to be a clinical dose. And so there's been some legal issues out there with brands, and those brands want to be food brands. Like Quest, we wanted to be a food brand, not a supplement brand. So I dosed them in a way that allowed us to kind of have a target for a share of stomach, meaning if there's too much functional ingredients inside of one can, that limits our ceiling for how much a household can drink in one day. For instance, caffeine. You might find that energy drinks aren't allowed for kids in households, and that limits share of household, share of stomach. Whereas something like a Perfy, if a kid has it, that's okay. It's not like we got to do something about this. They can have a Perfy, and it should be okay. I would always check with a pediatrician. But yeah, that was the main idea behind it, was to microdose some nootropics and adaptogens, not intended to be a clinical dose, but people do feel the impact of it if they're not used to things like this. And the idea was not to put people to sleep. There was a time period where Perfy had double of the dosages, and I fell asleep on my couch during R&D, not trying to fall asleep at all. So I wanted to scale that back so there was no sort of safety issues.
Share of stomach, I like that term. I've not heard of that before. That's a nice term to use. So can you talk about, I've got this Dr. Perfy here, which is pear and berries, and then you've got pepperoni pizza. Can you talk about the different flavors that you have and how you came up with those?
Yeah, the first three were kind of an ode to what the brand was initially going to be. The brand was initially going to be Agua Fresca. And I wanted to really attack the Mexico market. We are in the Mexico market today, so we're fulfilling that destiny. So the first three flavors, the fruity ones, speak to that. Fruit punch is our version of Hawaiian punch. Tropical citrus is a love child of pog juice and cactus cooler. Pog juice is pineapple, orange, guava, or passion fruit, orange, guava. Tropical citrus has pineapple and blood orange as well. And then blood orange yuzu is our version of a sun-kissed. And it's basically an orange soda with a little bit of a twang from yuzu, which is not quite mainstream just yet in the States. And then Dr. Perfy is our version of Dr. Pepper. We wanted to do something that had the fruits that have in it. Berries are very, very low glycemic, is going to be a staple in some of our future flavors you might find, as well as the tamarind. So the Dr. Perfy was our first big hit. I would say out the gate, people were impressed that it tasted like it. I always love going to shows or demos, and people from Texas are like, yeah, this isn't going to taste like Dr. Pepper. Yeah, right, whatever. And then they smell it and their eyes kind of like open wide, and then they taste it and they're like, pretty close.
It's been years since I've had Dr. Pepper, but the story of how Dr. Pepper got its start is pretty interesting. But as you were saying that, there's definitely a lot of Dr. Pepper coming through on this. So yeah, what's nice about these, from a consumer standpoint, is it's very low calorie. The one I'm drinking now, the Dr. Pepper sort of spinoff, Dr. Perfy, is 20 calories. There is 10 carbs, so very low calorie. And I think a nice benefit is all the nootropics and other good stuff for mood boosting enhancements. So probably a little too early for me to feel anything yet, but I'm excited to enjoy the ride. Hopefully feel some mood enhancements as we go. So you mentioned talking through your journey. So let's move to that. So how and why did you launch this brand?
Yeah, so I started working on Perfy because at my agency, you always get that itch. We worked with some of the fastest growing food and beverage brands in your fridge and pantry, some of the coolest brands out there, to be honest. And I always wanted to kind of check myself into the game as well, but it was always just a pipe dream. I had to focus on what I had to focus on. But during, right when I started my agency, things started really going well for my career. I had just left a couple jobs where I bet on myself, didn't have an income, and had to flip that into matching what I was previously making as quick as possible. And in doing so, a lot of like crazy things started happening, beginning 4 months after, actually it was 4 months after I left Quest. And just before I started, I incorporated Growth Buster. My mom was diagnosed with cancer. And as a result of that, months later, one of my older brothers had a stroke and he's still paralyzed today. His was probably, it can be attributed to a tough marriage. His daughter was battling leukemia, and my mom's diagnosis as kind of all of those building blocks to what happened to him. A few months later, My cousin passed from diabetes, and then a few months after that, my best friend from fentanyl. And kind of that whole story over and over again throughout 2020, before the pandemic, just before lockdowns. In January of 2020, my old roommate of 5 years took his life in our old laundry room. So all of these things kind of piled up, the last of which, I mean, still wasn't the last passing of somebody that I cared about, but that particular one kind of threw me over the edge. And during the lockdown, I kind of thought it was the end of the world, and I gave up and didn't really do things that I normally did, like work out or eat right. So I quickly devolved as a healthy human, and had to find some way out of it. And mentally, I was kind of struggling through my mom's diagnosis. She was with us until December 23, and she saw Perfy launch. And it was very, very cool to her because she didn't know that she helped me with the naming of it. She didn't know I was working on a beverage. And in February, April 2021, during development, when it was going to be an agua fresca, she said, when you were 2 years old, you used to grab me by the pocket and say, "Ma, you're Perfy." So that I went home and trademarked it almost immediately. But that was paired with some people saying that even though I'm more than half Mexican, I kind of have the fairer skin and don't quite look the part. And I thought that was quite odd. And so I wasn't set on what the name of the brand was going to be and what the actual product was going to be. So my mom's story led to a quick pivot. And months later, it launched as Perfy, the perfect soda. And here we are.
How do you deal with all of the losses that you experienced over that short period of time?
I didn't ask beforehand when we were preparing if this is a curse-friendly show, but I'll hold off on cursing. But it's not easy. It wasn't easy going from someone who people came to for fitness and nutrition advice to someone who um, doesn't look like that. It was tough. There was a time period where I didn't quite know what I was getting myself into. Seeing myself in the mirror, I didn't really see that I was going to a bad place. And then finally, I woke up and went to a fitness camp in Carlsbad for 5 weeks and reversed the prediabetes and kind of checked it there as though it was a drug addiction. But when it comes to losing people, I suck at it. I have some personal experiences in my life that I'll probably never talk about that I could probably attribute to why I'm not good at loss. But I just power through and try to find some sort of anchor. Perfy is that anchor for me now. Growth Buster was it prior, but once my mom's thing happened, I needed a new why.
That her spirit lives on through the brand that you created and that she was around to witness the brand name. So many congrats on serving her memory well with that. So
Thank you.
let's talk about how you so you decide to launch the brand. What were the steps you took? Let's start with building the actual product. So from deciding which ingredients should be in there, choosing a manufacturer, let's start with how you actually created the product. And then once you had product in hand, what your launch strategy looked like.
Awesome. I love telling this part of Perfy's history because it wasn't perfect. The pre-launch, like getting a product commercialized, I would say was pretty close to perfect. Certain things on my side weren't. So what it really looked like was for years, I was always dabbling with contact forms on R&D websites. I knew that I actually didn't even realize I had friends that could do this, but that's okay. It worked out exactly as it should have. I found a few groups responded to some didn't take me seriously because it was just me. And the one group that did was actually the number one choice that I had. They said, "Hey, we'd love to chat and see what you're up to." And it worked out that I worked with them. And what it looked like in terms of coming up with the products, I knew I wanted a beverage. I knew that I wanted it to be in a can. I didn't want single-use plastic and I didn't want glass bottles. No offense. I think most sodas are way more delicious out of glass bottles. I just didn't want to deal with the weight. And then it came down to guardrails. Now, I'm not a food scientist. I'll never claim to be, but I can be somebody who knows certain guardrails. Like I wanted to be under 30 calories per can. I wanted to be under 5 grams of sugar per can. I wanted to be under 10, 12 total carb per can. And I wanted the idea to be somewhat of a Spindrift on steroids. I think Spindrift is one of the tastiest sparkling waters, and it only uses fruit. The fruit does the heavy lifting. And my thesis was, what if we let fruit do the heavy lifting still, but added a natural sweetener system and some functional ingredients. And the sea salt was all R&D. That was on them, super smart on their part. Where we can use it, we do. And then we went through months of testing different flavors. I sent them certain inspirational flavors that I liked, certain things, certain sodas that were the parallels, and then certain drinks that were currently in the market that weren't quite the parallels, but had flavor profiles and mouthfeels that I really enjoyed. And that's where we started. I think we started with all three flavors and had different versions where we kind of chiseled it down to the final version. Some took all four tastings, some took three. The only one that took less than three was Dr. Perfy, which was supposed to be our eighth SKU, and immediately jumped to our fourth because of how good it was. I think we finished after like two tastings. It was really, really quick and my favorite flavor at the time.
So for the tastings, were you the chief taster? So you had this team kind of building out the different, let's say, formulations, and then you go in and you're tasting. And then once you land on something, how did you know it was right? Were you confident enough to say, yeah, this is it? Or did you do tastings on the street or with friends or family? Like, how did you go about that?
No, I really banked on my experience and what I think was missing out there. I spent way too much money tasting a lot of different things, most of which I didn't enjoy. So when it came to certain things, I went with my gut. And Perfy was actually better. At first, I had a guardrail that was a little too strict. Like fruit punch before, the fruit punch that was initially going to be launched had natural flavors in it. And it was banging. I still think it's good. It's just a little more heavy on the strawberry. But when it had natural flavors, it had some cherry derived natural flavors that really gave that back end mouthfeel and taste. Like it was perfect. I didn't go with natural flavors early on because there was an influencer that was going to potentially be an investor that wasn't really into natural flavors. So I made that concession and it turned out it didn't materialize. So rather than reformulate or go back to a formulation and pay all over again, I kept it as is. Fruit punch is like a cult classic, I think. And people that love it, love it. People that don't probably don't like strawberry or pineapple. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Sounds like you invested in yourself by trying lots of different flavors and drinks out there so you could dial in for what you wanted to see in the marketplace. Now, so you dial in your formulations, you get these different SKUs ready. How do you then move to the point where you are then selling product? What was your next step after that?
So part of my scope with R&D was for different co-manufacturers to be vetted. A bunch of different things about co-manufacturers can be good or bad. And the one that I felt the most comfortable with, the pros were that at the time the MOQs were lower. Cons were that it's kind of nestled in a certain corner of the United States, where as Perfy scales, there will be a need to have another place to produce for efficiencies. But where Perfy was at and where my comfort level was with the co-man, we found one that I think is a fit, and they're an amazing partner. So I mean, that I got lucky there. So that was part of it. I wouldn't have found them myself, I don't believe. And if you put something like that on LinkedIn, you're going to get smoked for the rest of the year in terms of your DMs. So it worked out good. R&D helped me find the co-man. And then how do we go from co-man to commercialized product? Trial runs. Trial runs are always good. You'd rather have a trial run where everything's messed up, but it costs you X amount of thousands versus saying, hey, we're good to go. So this is just magically going to go from bench top to commercialization. And our plan says that we need X amount of gallons of liquid, and that's going to cost us X amount of hundreds of thousands. And if something goes wrong, then your exposure's a little too uncomfortable. So I would advise that everyone does a trial run to make sure that the product actually works. And I would advise that you find a co-man where the form factor actually works. If you want a wafer bar, but the co-man only does enrobed, you probably shouldn't go to that co-man. There's a lot of different moving parts for liquid. Those sorts of considerations are what the kill step is. Like, are they doing tunnel pasteurization or are you using preservatives? That may be a consideration for somebody. How things get carbonated could be a consideration for somebody, and where it gets carbonated. So all of those things are questions to ask, whatever your product may be. I gotta take a step back. Like with Perfy's main line of products, I don't want to use preservatives. I wanted to do the process that we do, which is tunnel pass. But with our LTO flavors, I'm very open. They're just limited time. They're fun things. So pepperoni pizza has citric acid. I think it was important. It also gets tunneled, but citric acid is a preservative. Some people try to say that it's for flavoring. I would argue that it's probably not. I mean, yeah, it has flavor, but you can't really say that it's for flavoring. Our kill step is tunnel pass for pepperoni pizza, but I can't say no preservatives with this flavor, so it doesn't say that. But it is technically a preservative. So anywho, those are different things where you just have to be mindful in whatever you're producing.
What were your MOQs when you first got started with your co-manufacturer?
Can't say that one, but they were low enough to be achievable. And people probably wonder, I'll give value in a different way. Usually for LTOs like this pepperoni pizza one, it could be a big cash outlay. And what you don't know if there's demand. So there's like 5 people that have commented on the pepperoni pizza one. I think it's from Independence Day where something like no one asked the scientists if they should do it or something like that. Like it was some hilarious thing. I think the dude that saves the day asked the question. And what they're basically saying is, you didn't ask us if we wanted you to do this. And that's quite okay because my MOQs were so low on this LTO that we've already made our money back. And yes, this will be polarizing, but I've been able to trade services with my agency for the co-man to get MOQs lower. I've been able to do certain things that as a good partner, it's like you scratch my back, I scratch yours. I like to call it Moneyball moves, like the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill. So there's always things you can't do it in a new relationship. Just like if you hand someone your business card, you can't say, "Hey, let's I'm going to come over to your house tomorrow for dinner and a business talk." Like you have to work your way to those things. So my advice regarding that question is, regardless what your MOQs are, building a strong relationship with your partners is important because there are going to be times where they need something of you, and there's going to be times where you need something of them. And as long as you keep that relationship good, I think that you'll yield some good things. So I try to bring as much business to them as possible. No ask on my end, whether it's other supply chain needs or actual clients that will produce for them. And then when I've got a favor, they've usually been great. Like I love them. I can't say who and certain details about certain things, but I can say that for everyone out there building a product, if you have a relationship where you actually love who produces your product, assuming it's not you, which likely it isn't you anyway, then you're in a good place.
Yeah, trust makes a huge difference in relationships, especially with if you're having an outside company manufacture the product that you are you're literally putting your brand behind. So many things can go wrong. It's critical, right? If you don't have a good supplier, then something goes wrong, as it's going to in lots of relationships. Things happen. There can be miscommunication. People can make mistakes. So having a good partner to ride the ups and downs with you is great. And I love the Moneyball moves that you're making. So whatever you did, good work there. So you get your first production run complete, right? You move forward with these. You said 3 or 4 SKUs to start?
3 to start.
3 to start. And then how do you start moving product? What was your plan to then get cans into people's homes?
That's where the rub is. Year one, it didn't really happen. Like year one really sucked. So I didn't produce a whole ton, and I also didn't have a whole ton of demand. All I had was noise that Perfy was making. Like, oh, this is cool. I messed up on the label at first, so we've had 3 revisions of the label. I call V1, V2, V3. We've ultimately landed with what you're holding in your hand right now with the real fruit imagery. We initially launched with cute illustrations that didn't really hit. And if you look at any beverage set, every beverage has cute illustrations. So buyers weren't into it. So we didn't get cans in hands in a way that is viable for a brand, meaning people are buying them. We got cans in hands by giving them out. The label was terrible. We couldn't get on shelf, but we fixed it as quickly as possible. Very, very quick to pivot and fix. But we were sitting on product, and we got through that product through a number of ways. I think there are things like Fair, Mabel, there's pop-up grocer. There's Snack Magic was great because it actually had a leaderboard. So whenever we were leading on the leaderboard, we would post about that to show that, hey, this product doesn't suck, but the label does, and we're fixing it. So anywhere where you can tell any sort of story about the liquid actually being good, we did so. And then that sort of snowballed into a better 2023, and then a better 24, and 25 is going to be better than 2024, both from top line and bottom line perspectives. There's been improvements since year one, which was 2022. So the way that I would say move product early on, unless you're like a veteran in the industry and you pre-sell into a national retailer, I've seen it happen before where a brand's go-to-market strategy is, I think it was Sprouts and Albertsons, like nationwide. That's going to be 3,000 stores right there out the gate. Not a lot of brands are going to do that. A lot of brands are going to need to prove their worth. It's like I'm not sure who's familiar with Mike Tyson's Punch Out, but at first, you're fighting Glass Joe. You're not fighting Mike Tyson yet. You got to work your way up the ranks. And that's how I view 99% of CPG, or food and beverage to be specific, is you got to prove yourself. No one's just going to put your product on the shelf just because you're into it. It's got to work. It's got to pencil out for them. Things like Mabel, again, Fair, Range Me, got to give them credit. They helped me land my not first few, but like one of the biggest ones. They've landed multiple retailers and opportunities for us, and they've even landed my agency clients. So on both sides of the spectrum, they've been huge for both Perfy and Growth Buster. And you got to get out there and sample it. Do stunts, do whatever you want, but if your product is actually tasty, you got to get people trying it.
How do you think about the D2C channel and online, and how do you think about that compared to retailer? Or I guess I shouldn't say compared to, but how do you see those channels working together?
Hand in hand. At first, early in my career, I thought they were this or that, but it really is this and that, and they both serve each other in what I believe. Like I'm no guru. I've done this for a while, and this is what I believe is my point of view. I think that they both, if you think about like the recycle symbol, how there's arrows going around, that's kind of how I view omni-channel. And I'm going to get super philosophical here. There's ways where if you start out mainly on Amazon or D2C and the financial model works, that you can sustain and build yourself a house file or a Rolodex of customers and contact points. That's pretty hefty. It's going to cost a lot of money. So unless your margin is enormous, you're going to have injections of capital here and there, and that's fine. Then there's another one where you can go wholesale, but you don't have the velocity stories and the customers to support that. So you're launching in cold. Nobody knows you. It's like going to a networking event and getting on the microphone and saying, "Hey, everybody, I'm Vasa." Not going to work. People aren't going to want to shake my hand. Don't do that. It has to be a little bit of both. And I think the easiest way to do this, where you can actually make a dollar, obviously .com, your own website, is important. Amazon, I used to hate on early on. I thought Amazon competed too hard and it couldn't like pencil out financially. There are ways to do it. So once I learned about my shipping D2C for one 12-pack versus shipping pallets of 12 packs into Amazon, I did a little bit of both. I've got the Amazon Buy with Prime on my website. I don't mind where they buy from. Each one has its advantages. Set that up finally. And what I found, and where those arrows come into play, is I've seen reviews, people finding Perfy in store and then stocking up online, and then people buying online and doing impulse buys in store. So as long as you have a place where people can buy it, that's good. But there's even opportunity if you don't have the whole nation covered. I like to run the strategy on, if you're running ads to support your D2C business, assuming this is like Meta, someone's going to comment, "Ooh, this looks great. Where can I buy it?" And if they're in Idaho and you don't have Idaho covered, and they don't want to buy on Amazon or your website because the MOQ is too high, like they don't even know if they like it, why do they want to buy a case of Perfy? I always like to ask them where they live, what their zip code is. And there's ways to win even in that. If we are near them, we'll find it on our store locator and send them the cross streets. Like, hey, it's at your Sam's Club on this corner and that corner. And if they're not near one, then you can send them a retail request form. And that basically pings a local retailer and says, "Hey, I'd love for you to carry this brand." And if you get enough of those, they usually reach out to you and ask, who's your distributor? So there's what I like to call multiple ways of winning. They all kind of serve each other. You have to look at it from a higher view than, I'm a founder and an agency owner, so I look at things a little bit differently, in my opinion. I'm not looking at every single ad and saying, "Oh, this needs to drive this ROAS." I don't really even run ads. I've found, like, distributors have found Perfy through organic social. They have picked up Perfy literally, like our distributor in the Midwest found us on social. So I think it all services each other, and you just have to have an open enough mind to know that just doing things right on your own channels can be very, very helpful.
What are you doing on social that you think has drawn attention from distributors and retailers?
So I would say just now is the first time I've really focused on organic social, and that's the launch of pizza. If you look at our grid, it feels composed. It feels intentional. And in the past, I've just been doing, honestly, all of the stupidest, craziest stuff just to see if it sticks to the wall. Like, I've gone on to Sora for TikTok and to brain rot videos to see if, just to have fun. And if it doesn't work, like, who cares? It's not the end of the world. So to answer your question, what have I been doing on social? I've been experimenting, for lack of any other words, and I've been having fun. But the most impactful strategic thing I've done is having type 1 diabetics test their blood sugar. So every so often you'll see a slew of type 1 diabetics drink Perfy and then test their blood sugar, showing that it doesn't impact it. They don't need a bolus, which means injecting insulin prior to consuming a bunch of carbs. And when they test their blood sugar and you see it flat, that's a testament that not a lot of others can say they can do.
So that's something that, consumer trust is insanely important, and any successful D2C brand, if we're just focusing on online for a minute, gaining consumer trust is one of the biggest challenges, right? Because people just don't trust media companies or brands as much as they used to, which is why most successful e-commerce sites will have tons of social proof. Customer reviews, you'll see this product has 5-star ratings from 20 plus thousand sales or 20 plus thousand reviews, along with media mentions, because it takes a lot to earn that trust. But I really like what you're doing, where it sounds like you're actually having videos of diabetics who are drinking Perfy and then showing that their blood sugar is not spiking.
Oh, yeah. And our tagline's boost moods, not blood sugar. And that sums up Perfy in a nutshell. Our intent is to be a mood boosting beverage, not a euphoric, like tons of adaptogens and awesome mushrooms and stuff like that. It's just to be like a delicious drink that doesn't spike your blood sugar, and it happens to have some ingredients that are good for your brain. Our goal is to show that, and the only way to show that, like, anyone can doctor up their own blood sugar, but having type 1 diabetics who need products they can trust the most, that's not to say that they can't have sugar. Type 1 diabetics sometimes have lows and they need to have sugar, but for the most part, they need to be in control of their blood sugar. Having them post it is You can't beat that. And that's what that goes for all of the permanent flavors. The LTO, we don't have boost moods, not blood sugar on it. We have drink more pizza. We don't have for a happy you on the top. We have limited edition. Pizza doesn't have any functional ingredients. It's just a fun launch that you can see me. I'm sipping on it. I'm not forcing myself to. It's actually enjoyable to me. Some people don't like it. That's all right. People are talking about it. So yeah, that's the idea. Boost moods, not blood sugar. Type 1 diabetics, test your blood sugar, and the proof's in the
I mean, just being around pizza boosts everybody's mood, right? Whether you're drinking a pizza flavored thing or eating pizza itself, it makes you happy. So I think that's a legitimate way to go about it. So one thing I did see on your online store that I thought was interesting was the buy one get one or get a free Perfy. Basically, somebody purchases a can and then you refund them for a second can. Can you talk about how that works and how you came about that?
Yeah, I'm going to give a robust answer here with the context. So, to plan promos in retail, you need to be so far in advance. So, if I wanted to roll out a program for April of next year with a distributor, a broadline distributor, I probably have to have that paperwork submitted sometime around now, or maybe in the next couple months. So you have to be really, really ahead of it. And as a startup brand with not a lot of budget, you're likely going to find yourself in a place where one, you probably can't even afford those trade spends. Two, you're not thinking that far out in advance. You're just trying to keep afloat. So there's things like Aisle. I use Aisle. You can run quote unquote in-store loyalty programs. And what this does is allow you to create any sort of offer that you want. It could be specific to a retailer. It could be a blanket for all retailers. You can kind of drum up whatever you want to have. Perfy's is just a simple one. I haven't gone in there and spent tons of time, but ours is simple. You buy 2 cans and we'll reimburse you for one via Zelle, PayPal, or Venmo in the next, I think, 24 or 48 hours. The best part of it is I'm not the one pressing those buttons. I pay a certain amount per month. If our redemptions go over that, then I pay more on top of that. But all of the Venmos and transactions come from the group that we're paying for. I think it's very, very valuable because there are some distributors that are going to be like, we need this, man. Like, send us more. They're not really IRCs or instant redeemable coupons because those are usually clearinghouse things that you hand to a person checking you out at the register. But they're ones where you scan a QR code, you get a phone number, and all of those sorts of good things. And the best part about this, in my opinion, we used to use companies like Inmar and Mandlik and Rhodes to support brands. We would send out cool coupons for influencers and VIPs, buy one, get one, free VIP, like go get a pint of ice cream, whatever you want. And those all have their redemption fees, their clearinghouse fees, the cost of printing. And it really, really adds up. And you'll find that some people are upside down in their offer. And it's kind of archaic. And I think, no offense if you're listening to this and you're from those brands, I think that you guys are dinosaurs. The fact that the fact that they charge so much more doesn't make sense because Aisle might be up there in terms of, I think a couple grand less a year, depending on your redemptions, but you get to have the customer's phone number. You get to remarket to them. You can see deep basket analysis. You can pull insights like, I think 50% of all Perfy redeemers have bought a protein bar or something like that. Like, you can find certain insights that are very, very valuable, and they're only growing. Like, they're building product and product. And no, I'm not an investor. I'm not an advisor. I'm just a user of the product. I'm a fan of the founder, and it's just a good product.
That's great. Sounds like you can then take those insights and either use those for productive or partnerships.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's super insightful. What are you seeing successful Shopify brands, either those focusing on D2C or they're using Shopify as support for their retail efforts? What are you seeing successful Shopify brands doing that the ones who are struggling are not?
So I don't know if I would know which brands are successful and which ones are struggling. You don't really know until you know the finances. I would say most brands that are using something like an Aisle, there's also like a WeStock version of it. Like WeStock's another brand that has something like that. I feel like there's a bunch of other people whipping together things that support a digital to retail presence. Real quick, digital to retail is a term I came up with a long time ago. I bought the URLs and I sold them last year. So it's something that's happening and is really heating up. It's what we did at Quest, where it was the customers that requested Quest Nutrition at GNC, and that was the first national retailer. Going to be the brands that are strong on D2C, what they're doing, they have tons of house file. They have subscribers, emailers, phone numbers. Maybe they have a newsletter too. They have an audience. They have social followers. I call that house file. It's a KPI and a metric that we keep track of for all of the brands we work with. How many followers you have here, 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 and here. How many subscribers, how many emails, how many phone numbers. Because when you launch a new retailer with all of a big house file, you have an army that wants to buy it at Whole Foods or Sprouts, whatever that launch may be. And if you segment your Klaviyo list or your send lane or whatever ESP you use, you can start using your email list and your text list to promote regional launches. So if you launch on the East Coast in a Wegmans or in a Publix, or on the West Coast in a QFC or a Fred Meyer, you can just start using your online wins and Housefile to support retailers. And they really, really love that. Some only look at followers, some only look at reviews on Amazon. But if you put in your presentation how you're going to support them with this enormous portfolio or Rolodex of people that you have, that'll go a long way.
If you were going to start over, knowing then what you know now, and you wanted to grow your brand to 7 figures in revenue as quickly as possible, what would your playbook look like?
I wouldn't have rushed. I would say that I rushed, even though I feel like I was taking like appropriate amount of time. I wouldn't have rushed to market. I would have probably tried to pre-sell into retailers. Assuming I can start over with the network I have now, which is even larger than the network prior to starting, I would probably ask for a few more favors of, hey, what are buyers looking for right now in this category? I don't know that I would do beverage again, even though it's so meaningful to me. I think the name would be the same, but I think that there are some I would either create, if I was going to create something heavy, it would have to have a higher SRP. Like there's some sauces out there that I think are really awesome. There's sauce, there's Molly something. She just launched a AO, which is like a aioli mayonnaise type squeeze bottle thing. I probably would have a higher AOV, like a $9.99 SRP or more if I'm going to do something heavy. And I don't know that I would stick to beverage. Maybe I would, who knows? But I definitely wouldn't have rushed, and would try to pre-sell into a retailer.
What's next for the brand?
Launching Cherry Cola imminently. I have a lot of good meetings at Expo West. Have presented to a lot of category reviews. Honestly, just kicking butt. We've stuck around, we've done well, and there's no employees. Like I don't pay myself. We use my agency. We leverage a couple brokers. My agency does the ops. Simon on my team does that. So we're a very, very lean team. My goal is to continue staying lean, but also bring in some resources to help us take it to the next level. Because if some of these pitches turn into yeses all at once, it's going to be a rocket ship.
Love it. Let's now move to the speed round. So each answer about 30 or 60 seconds or less. What is one of your most recommended books?
The Rise of Superman or Founder's Story by Dave Gerhardt. But my number one, I say in order 3, 2, 1, is Forging an Ironclad Brand, Lindsay Peterson.
What's an under the radar product or brand you've used and like, but most people don't know about?
I was just thinking about this. Before it was Siete, nobody ever gave them the credit that they deserved for how big they were and how well they have different categories. Now it's Chalk Zero. Nobody talks about them. I think Chalk Zero might be doing 500 million D2C and they don't even talk about it themselves. That's my guess. That brand I think is enormous. Not one mention in PR that I've seen in about 5-7 years. That brand is one to watch out for. Chalk Zero.
What do they do? I haven't heard of them.
They make everything candy. Like literally, they have marshmallow cream. They have their own Snickers version. It's called Raya because that's the CMO's name. They are the most underrated brand, I think, in the world.
Awesome.
Food and beverage, at least.
What's one thing in life you do better than most people, and how do you do it?
I would say drum or sleep. I think for as much as I work and as much energy drinks as I drink, I think I sleep pretty dang good, and I don't mind sleeping 8 to 10 hours a night if I have to. And drumming, I've been drumming since I was, I think, 6 years old. I would venture to say that I'm probably a 90th percentile plus.
How often do you practice?
Anytime I'm stressed, it's my flow. So The Rise of Superman, if you read that book, you'll understand what I'm saying. I was playing last night, so I'd say a couple times a week now.
And for sleep, do you do anything to prep for sleep, or have you always been able to fall asleep quickly?
Nothing more than a bear does in its cave. Probably roll over once and that's it.
Awesome. Tell me about your favorite shopping experience, online or offline.
I would say the best shopping experience in person is probably Japan. I just felt like I was at the Golden Saucer in Final Fantasy VII. So it felt like all of the happiness you can imagine from the lights and politeness of the people. I'd say that has to be my answer for in person. Online, I would think a shopping experience. I haven't purchased anything, but I study it, is the Native website. They have so many SKUs that I don't know how they make it look streamlined.
Where can people connect with you to learn more?
LinkedIn, Vasa Martinez. I'm on X, Vasa Martinez as well, but I don't really say anything serious on X. My Instagram is Perfy Vasa, and you can hit the contact form on Perfy's website if you want to reach me as well. That's me that's responding.
Vasa, thank you so much for bringing Perfy to market as a way to provide mood-boosting, healthier soda, sharing your expertise and insights with our audience, and for joining us on the Shopify Happy Hour.
Thank you.